welcome back to Box to Box, brought to you by Sportology TV. In part one, it was great to be joined by Jason McAteer, but now in part two, we have another great guest. We have a former defender for teams including Liverpool, Aston Villa and Leeds, and an ex-England international who is now a pundit. Delighted to be joined by Stephen Warnock. Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How is life treating you post playing football?
It's been interesting. A big transition to try and find out what you want to do next. I think that was the biggest challenge for me was, can I get the same buzz from playing football as I can something else? And my retirement came around in a funny way, if you like. I was in the car and got a phone call from the BBC. I'd done a couple of shows for them, and they said that they liked what I was doing, were interested in keeping me on, and that if I decided to retire, would I be interested in working for them? And I pretty much retired on the spot there and then, because I knew that the opportunity would disappear and someone else would take that opportunity. And I just thought, what a fantastic chance to go and work for one of the biggest companies in the world, and not many people get that opportunity to be asked to be part of a team like the BBC.
So is that now your sort of goal, to stay in the sort of punditry media side of football, keeping yourself involved in football?
Yeah, I think that has to be. I mean, from my point of view, I want to be involved in football no matter what happens. I think long term, I'd love to be a coach or a manager. I see the punditry side as a great way of watching the game and learning things, seeing tactically how teams play and how teams sort of set up, if you like, and what they do in training sessions. I've been fortunate enough to be able to go to training grounds and see training sessions and see what managers do behind the scenes. But long term, I've got a real itch to get out on the training pitch and try and sort of be a manager, or at least a coach anyway.
Seems like there's quite a lot of stress being a manager, though. The only disadvantage to it. Seems like a job.
Depends how good you are, but I think there's a lot of there's loads of ways of looking at it, isn't there? It depends what stress you want to put on yourself, how much commitment you're going to throw into it. Don't get me wrong, I know you've got to be fully committed to it, but I think even with the punditry side of things, people don't realise how in depth you have to go into your research and how much goes into either talking about a game or going into a TV show and talking about numerous talking points from the weekend. There's a lot of stress that comes upon that. I mean, we all know what social media is like now. Everyone's the worst pundit in the world, or you're the favourite pundit, and they're the ebbs and flows of being a pundit, and what it's all about is you've got to have thick skin. It's no different to being a coach or a manager as well. So for me, it's trying to keep on a level playing field of knowing that you're good at what you do, or you put a lot of effort into what you do, and try and learn from every situation.
Well, we'll start off talking about one of your former clubs, Liverpool. Obviously, a fantastic season for them. Just sum up the sort of season in your opinion for them.
Well, I thought it was a really strange summer last year because of only buying Harvey Elliott and Sepp van der Berg as well. Two youngsters. People were saying, well, if Liverpool was so far behind Manchester City, how are you going to catch it up without even signing players? But I think what Jurgen Klopp realised was there was an evolution of the squad that was just getting better and stronger year after year, and more understanding of the tactics. He'd obviously brought Van Dijk and Alisson into the squad, and he knew that they'd had more experience and a winner's mentality within the squad. But I don't think anyone saw Liverpool running away with the title the way they did, but wow, were they phenomenal. I've said this a few times on other shows and spoke about it, is that what I found with Liverpool last year was this ability to win a game like a boring Arsenal team of the 90s under George Graham, that they could win 1-0, they could go a goal ahead, and they could keep that lead and defend it well. But then they could also play like Pep Guardiola's Man City, where they were open, expansive, and they could dominate teams. And what they often learned to do was adapt within the game very, very quickly as to which one they had to be that game. And I think that was the main trait of the Liverpool team last year. I think the mentality blew other teams away. They knew that when they were stood in the tunnel with the other team, it was almost like the old United as well and the old Arsenal, where they'd win games in the tunnel as well. And I think once you've got that, that's very, very empowering when you stood in the tunnel next to teams. Because I've stood against them teams before, where you've been in the tunnel and you look across and you see a Roy Keane, a Beckham, a Scholes, and you're thinking Giggs, and you're going along the line thinking, this is some line up this. And then you think of Arsenal and you're going sort of Henry, Vieira, Pires, and you're going, how do we beat them? And that's what Liverpool have got now.
What do you think of Klopp as the manager? Do you think that it's a massive amount to do with him, as obviously the players as well, but do you think he's the sort of one that's brought it all together?
Yeah, I think he has to be. I think I mean, don't get me wrong, he has to go to the board with a vision, and he has to say to the board, listen, this is what I need in place, what I think will make us successful. I think what the other thing that Jurgen Klopp's done really well is that he's not afraid to change his backroom staff. If he thinks someone in the backroom staff is not getting into the next level, he's quite happy to change it and bring someone else in who he thinks will take them to the next level. But you have to give credit to FSG as well, the owners of the club, to back him in the way that they have. Don't get me wrong, he hasn't spent, apart from Alisson and Van Dijk, but the way that they recouped the money from the sale of Philip Coutinho, was able to reinvest that money. And again, he didn't think Philip Coutinho would take them to the next level, reinvest it in two players who he thought could take it to the next level. So I think his overall ability to put an infrastructure behind the scenes to build a structure on the pitch has been phenomenal.
Do you think that Liverpool will repeat success next year? Obviously, it's going to be a bit tougher for them. They're probably not going to run away with it. But do you think they can repeat success?
I do. I really do. I think when you think of what they've done this season and the belief that they've got, the hunger that they got from winning the Champions League to then go on and try and win the Premier League after coming so close to winning it the year before, that took a lot of sort of desire, mentality. When you think of Tottenham, when they didn't win the Champions League, what happened to them? Manager gets sacked in 14th position in the league. That didn't happen to Liverpool when they were beaten the year before by Real Madrid. They bounced back with an incredible year, both in the league and in the Champions League. So I think the mentality is completely different. I think the way that Jurgen Klopp sets about his approach to a season. I've been there on pre-seasons where, I mean, last season, in pre-season, there was a lot of talk about the European Cup, and it was all that was talked about, winning the Champions League and how great it was. And Jurgen Klopp just got to the point and went, "That's history." Because it went with them everywhere on the pre-season trip, and he said, "Right, get rid of it now. I don't want to see it again. That has to go." And that was his mentality, and he put that into the players, instilled it. And I just think this season will be exactly the same. I think, don't get me wrong, there'll be stiff competition from the likes of Man City, Man United, and Chelsea. But I still believe that Liverpool and City are the teams to beat.
Well, another team that used to play for, Aston Villa, they managed to stay up. They didn't, they survived relegation. But should they be happy with that? Obviously, their first season back into the Premier League. So for a lot of teams, that is the sort of only aim, is to make sure they stay up. But should they be happy with the season as a whole?
I think they have to be. I think when you're coming up from the Championship into the Premier League, the hardest thing to do is to stay up. Don't get me wrong, you'll get the odd team like Wolves and Sheffield United who take it by storm, and they look incredible. And but more often than not, teams that come up struggle to maintain that sort of that mentality of a winner's mentality, because when you're in the Championship and you're winning game after game after game, you take that into the Premier League. But when you start losing a couple of games and you start getting a couple of heavy defeats, then it becomes really difficult. And it's difficult for Dean Smith as well. First year in the Premier League, he doesn't have an overly experienced backroom staff with him. I mean, great appointments in Craig Shakespeare coming into the club now, who knows the Premier League, obviously won the league with Leicester. But for me, I think it was exactly what Dean Smith said. They had to invest in the squad because they knew it wasn't good enough. it was a big gamble putting 100 million into the squad, but it paid off in the end. And I do think one or two additions, quality additions this summer, you'll see them finish hopefully mid-table. Anywhere between sort of 14th and above would be a huge bonus for Villa.
Well, talking of transfers, do you think that they're going to manage to keep hold of Jack Grealish? Do you think that's going to happen?
I think the biggest thing that's gone in Aston Villa's favour is the pandemic. Clubs are reluctant to spend big money. I think if clubs had fans in grounds and there was money coming into the clubs again, I think you might see a different transfer market. I think the only business that we're really seeing getting done is from Roman Abramovich, and he's the multi-billionaire. You see Manchester City spending a few pounds as well. Again, multi-billionaire owners. Aston Villa have got billions as well. I think that's something that we are forgetting. They've got very, very deep pockets, very wealthy owners. And I think Jack will be interested to see what Aston Villa are doing in the transfer market and what he sat down and spoke to them about, whether they're going to bring in big players who they think can kick the club on and progress them higher up the league. And I think that'll have a big say on whether Jack stays. I really hope he does. But I understand if a Manchester United come in for him, that he thinks I can go and try and win some trophies and play at a huge football club who are potentially going to compete at the higher end of the league. What
players would you like to see coming in? What players do you think they need and that would really benefit them?
Well, they're desperate for a goal scorer. I mean, you look at Wesley, who came in, picked up a serious injury during the season, and he looked like he was just about to he got the formation that suited him against Burnley, and then he picks up the injury against Burnley, which Villa went on to win that game. And it was just such an unfortunate incident at the time. Samatta's a very good player, but also needs help. But what you need when you're a club like Aston Villa is you need a 20 goal a season man, a player who's going to provide. I also think they need to take pressure off Jack Grealish if he is to stay at the club. So someone who is a forward-thinking player who can also get on the ball, so that people have someone else that they need to mark out the game. But these players are going to cost a premium, and it's whether Villa can attract those type of players as well.
Well, moving on to Leeds, another former team of yours. They obviously had a great season, winning the Championship. They are going up to the Premier League. How happy were you to see that? Because obviously it's been a long time coming.
Oh, delighted. Really, really pleased. I think it's been the nearly club for so many years, hasn't it? We're like getting in the playoffs and in and around it, falling away and not quite happening. I thought last season, the game against Derby in the playoffs I was at the game, and it was one of the most fascinating games of football I've ever been to. But this season they've been dominant. They've looked worthy champions. They've blown teams away at times. I do think the break came at a good time for them because of the size of the squad. It allowed them to recuperate, get some energy back into themselves. But to see Leeds back in the Premier League, again, it's not ideal because of the pandemic that we can't get fans into grounds, because I just worry that the first few games when they do need a little bit of help, when things might not be going their way early on. I mean, the first 5 fixtures that they've got, real big hitters coming, or they're playing some tough games. Liverpool first game of the season, and you're thinking, you want your away following at the ground to really help you along, and I think they're going to miss that early doors.
Yeah, because Leeds have got such a hardcore following. Their fans, they're one of the biggest clubs really for that. Away fans, everything. So obviously it's going to be hard for them. Their first season in the Premier League. Do you think that the goal then should be, especially with the fact that they don't know when fans will be back in the ground, they just need to try and stay up? Should that be a sort of realistic target?
Oh, absolutely. When you think of the years that they've been in the Championship and League One, Leeds fans now, okay, there'll be some who'll get carried away and will say, "Oh, we should be doing what Sheffield United and Wolves are doing." Get yourself sustained in the Premier League for a couple of years and then build on it. It's the hardest thing to do. But I do feel that in Bielsa they've got a really interesting manager, a manager who tactically is superb, understands what it is to go up against top managers. I think it'll be very interesting to see what they do in the transfer market. I don't think that they'll go all out for big names. I think what Bielsa's learned and understood is that the Championship's a very, very competitive league, and the standard of players within the Championship is very high. And I'd be interested to see whether he just thinks, I'll buy a few players from the Championship who I know can step up to that next level. And it also keeps the changing room as a tight knit. You're not bringing in huge names on huge salaries, and you're just trying to keep a togetherness, because I think the team spirit of what Leeds have built over the last couple of years under Bielsa will see them into next season and can be huge for them as well. Because
Leeds are interested in signing Ben White, but obviously, he's been on loan there. Do you think he's a good signing?
I think it'd be incredible. He's a really good player, really comfortable on the ball, good defender, can play centre-back, can play centre-mid. There's no wonder that, it's not a surprise, should I say, that Liverpool have been interested as well, and he's been linked to them. They've obviously lost Dejan Lovren and be looking for someone to come in and either bolster the squad or push Joe Gomez alongside Virgil van Dijk. But it's going to take, Brighton know what they have. They know they've got a great player in Ben White, and someone that they want to keep hold of themselves. But again, in the market that we're in, a player who's been out on loan and suddenly demanding a figure anywhere between 25 and 30 million pounds, it's very tough for the owner to turn down.
Who else do you think that Leeds would sort of benefit from getting in? What particular sort of positions do you think that they would really benefit from?
Well, I think within every Premier League team, the hardest players to buy are the magicians, the ones that can open a defence, who can make things happen. We were talking about Jack Grealish, and can you find someone else to play alongside him? You look at Hernandez, who's at Leeds now, 35 years old. He was the magician last year for them in the Championship. Towards the end, they were just desperate to get him out on the pitch, whether it was half an hour, whether it was to play the first 50, 60 minutes to try and win them a game. Next year, will he be able to do that at the level of the Premier League? Maybe for the first 20 odd games he might, but then in the second half of the season where you really need them players, that's where it becomes difficult. So again, like I said about Villa, at a premium, you're looking for the flair players, and you're desperate for a goal scorer. Leeds are desperate for a goal scorer. I'm seeing Batshuayi's name branded about, and possibly someone like him coming into the club. Proven goal scorer at international level, scored a lot of goals for Chelsea as well when he's played. And you're just thinking, for a player like him to go to Leeds, I think that'll be a really good buy for Leeds in the first year in the Premier League, to get a natural goal scorer who has come from a big club as well in Chelsea, plays for a big national team in Belgium, so understands the pressures of playing football at a big club as well. So that's often the problem when you're buying players, is that you're trying to look for bargains, you're trying to look for the next great player, but often when they come into big clubs like Leeds United or Aston Villa, they find that pressure on the shoulders too much to take.
What is your prediction for next season? What teams do you think, what is the prediction for, say, the top four, making the top four, and the winner?
I think it'll be very difficult for Liverpool to defend the title with Manchester City, but I do think they're going to do it. I think it'll be closer, a lot closer than this season. I think Manchester City buying Nathan Ake is an interesting one, because you've got two left-footed centre-halves, and I'm wondering what Pep's plan is, whether his plan is to do what he did in the Champions League and go with three at the back, and that's the way he sees his team going forward. So I think that's an interesting situation. Depends who else that they buy, whether they can get a few more players through the door. If they don't, I think defensively they're still very suspect, and teams can get at them. But I think it will be Liverpool, Man City. I think it will be Chelsea, and I think it'll be United as well. Whether it'll be United, Chelsea, I'm not too sure. But Manchester United have to buy as well. They desperately need reinforcements into the squad. I think we saw that initial burst of games where they were unplayable at times, but then playing the same players week in, week out. I know it was over a shorter period of time, but the Premier League's going to be condensed again next season, and I just think it's going to be very difficult for them. At the other end of the table, I think it's going to be a huge task for Scott Parker and Fulham, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I think again you've got a very inexperienced manager in Scott, and Scott will know now that fourth from bottom is a huge achievement to stay within in the Premier League. But he is capable of doing it. Team spirit, he said that he's rebuilt at the club has been huge. But it's going to be very interesting down the bottom end. And it's what I've really enjoyed about the Premier League over the last couple of seasons is that we're seeing a clutch of teams sort of now. We know what the top 6 or 7 or teams are, but now there's a huge fight. There's a huge gulf. Often you knew that it was 3 from 4 teams. Now it's not. There's sort of 7, 8 teams at the bottom who are always getting dragged into it. And there's always a surprise in there, I think, as well.
Definitely. Well, before we finish, we ask all the former players this. Obviously, you played for some great teams with some great players, but who do you think is the greatest player you ever played alongside?
I'd have to say Gerrard. I think when you think of his quality, I'd be interested to see how many guests you've had on and you've said the same thing.
A few have, a few.
Yeah, and another player as well who was very, very close to it, and I wish I'd have played with him sort of 5-6 years earlier, was Guy at Blackburn. As such a phenomenal talent, one of the best players that I've played with, and again, I caught him towards the latter end of his career, but such a phenomenal player. But yeah, Gerrard was the one. I think when you played with him, you just knew the quality that he possessed. And I remember going away with England and being in a car, me and Jamie Carragher, and Carragher just turned around and said, "You haven't seen him at his best yet." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, when he goes to England, it's almost like I want to prove to everyone at England that I'm the best here as well." And he said he goes up another 5 or 10%. And I was thinking, he hasn't got another 5 or 10%. He's unbelievable as it is. And he did. He went up another 5 or 10% at England. And it was phenomenal to watch. And the mentality of the guy was out of this world.
Yeah, a few people have said him, definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for your time, Stephen. It's been great speaking to you. And hopefully, when we get the season up and running again, we can get you back on and talk a bit more about the sort of dealings that are going on once all the transfer windows done.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. It was great to have Jason McAteer and Stephen Warnock joining us for Box to Box this week. Make sure you stay tuned. We have plenty more coming up. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell button, like, and leave some comments. See you next time.